Howdy. Welcome to the Gundam Explained Show. This is episode 81. It's February 2nd, so getting close to Valentine's Day. I'm Adam Blue, joined by Steven. Steven, have you already planned Valentine's Day out?
Oh, I mean, we've got a 5-month-old baby. That's our Valentine's Day is just going to be surviving. And I don't know. Did you see a groundhog this morning? I don't know if that's still a thing. Do we?
That's a good point. I haven't even kept up with that in a while because, yeah, with the winter, you were saying it's snowing. It's been iced over here in Texas.
Wow,
so
that's nuts. Yeah, I think see what you ought to do is you ought to just restart the show every like 6 or 7 minutes.
Yeah, right.
To pull a Groundhog Day.
Yeah, that's funny actually. There's got to be a YouTube video of a podcast that's done something like that. You know, when they get meta. But no, I mean, speaking of restarting the podcast, not that that's going to happen, but we've seen before in the past where the show crashes, I can get it back up. Steven's kind of helped me tweak some things, so it might make it a better experience overall. So hopefully we can get past those little technical difficulties.
It makes it worse. That's Adam's fault.
Yeah, exactly. I told Steven that yesterday. I think when we were syncing up, like, he wasn't hearing me. And then I finally got my mic working. I'm like, hey, if something goes wrong, blame me. Because it probably is something. But it's been great learning all this stuff. But yeah, morning, everyone. I see Ian, Armad, Neo X, Shirt Lad. Good to see you. Thanks for sending over that Gundam, what is it called again? Hyperion Gundam stuff. And then
awesome.
Shafak, hopefully I'm saying that correctly. It's good to be seeing you around lately. Dan Vince, yeah. So, Shirt Lad, voice message thing. Not yet in terms of for the podcast live, but I am going to do an additional video that's going to go out in the next couple days where I'm going to take the latest voice messages and a Patreon paragraph or essay that I didn't get to from January and go over some other funny comments I've got. Because a lot of times there's really cool YouTube comments on the videos and I never get to them anymore. And I might do a separate video to catch up on things from January. But
yeah, it's like you hit 3,000 subscribers, and then all of a sudden you forget the little guys.
Yeah, no, there's truth to that. I remember when I first started off, I would answer every comment and make videos about the comments, and then it was like there was just too many. But there's really good stuff that people say in the comments sometimes that I want to highlight.
Yeah. And have you noticed that you stopped getting notifications about the comments? Like I used to get emails every day saying, hey, another comment. And now it's like I get one every so often.
Yeah, it seems like they do like, and maybe something I did like bulk notification or something where it's at a specific time. But speaking of YouTube videos and comments, you had your video go up last Friday, which was awesome.
Loved it.
And you even had this was hilarious because for Patreon you had a kind of like a blooper video that went up.
Yeah.
And then my comment was like, wow, I hope to see more of these or something. And you were like, I don't. And I was like, oh yeah, true. But when they happen, it's hilarious.
Yeah, for those of you not on the Midnight Hatter Patreon, that magnet video, there were magnets harmed in the filming of that video. That several magnets ended up super glued together.
Yeah. Because that's a really neat project in the first place, but I didn't really think about as you're building it and incorporating magnets when they can like kind of mess with each other because you're trying to put it together. I love it. No, that was cool. And then so yesterday, and if you've missed Steven's live from yesterday, links in the description. That was a lot of fun. I guess some discussion about AI in terms of in the shows. It came up on his Discord, and that turned into a pretty cool topic.
Yeah, I mean, it ended up being like an awesome conversation just about like engineering and AI in general. So, I mean, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, it definitely was.
Except it was an hour too early.
Oh yeah, which hey, just an hour earlier, people can get their fill of this.
Hopefully, you guys enjoyed the nice little lunch break.
Oh yeah, no, I'm sure we do. So some other things. Again, this comes out as a podcast. It goes out on all the podcast platforms. If there's one missing, just let me know. Subscribe if you haven't. That sort of thing. Isn't that what they say? And then like or something.
Yeah, smash like,
yeah,
ring the bell, all that good stuff.
No, but today we're going to talk about a few things. I've got a lot in the hopper, but we'll just see, like, as the time goes, what we'll get to. But for real, for sure, it's pretty interesting that in Gundam Evolution they announced a new suit, one that I wasn't even familiar with, so we'll talk about that.
Yeah, pretty sweet.
Some Witch from Mercury surprises that came about. And then based off of our discussion yesterday, so we talked about AI within Gundam, how it's used. But there's this one thing I learned from that I want to talk to about today. So if you want to see part 1 of our discussion after this, and you haven't watched Steven's video from yesterday, our live, we kind of dive more into this discussion about AI within the universe. Okay, so I'm going to get started here. I'm going to switch scenes real quick. Remember, guys, if there's any... Oh, that was supposed to happen. Any sort of technical difficulties you run into, just let me know. All right, so ignore the guy from...
what, J. Jonah Jameson over here?
Yeah. No, okay, so I did this video, the live-action Mobile Suit Gundam movie created by AI. So in our Discord, like, I think Lucas and Goose kept sharing these badass videos of, like, Metal Gear Solid as an 80s movie, or Star Wars as, like, a Japanese movie. And like, you know, my whole thing is it would be awesome to make one of these of, like, a Gundam AI. And actually, let me start by showing that first. So this is my little Mid-Journey page. Let me actually, real quick, make it easier for everyone to see everything.
Oh, here, just a moment.
Yeah, sure. Okay. There we go. So, yeah, I'm using Mid-Journey, and it's funny because I was using AI before, and then the AI images before, and I kind of got like, I just didn't really like it because I was never able to get the output I really want. It reminds me when I'm just drawing in real life, and I draw something, and I'm like, God, that's not anything like I want. But I kind of learned how you have to make the AI work for you. So I thought this was funny. My son is into Five Nights at Freddy's, FNAF, and he did, like, his idea was a plushie, but like Gundam. And I thought that was pretty cool. And then the other one was FNAF, but like as Power Rangers. I thought that was a good idea too.
I mean, like, those are not, that's not Mighty Morphin. That's like, I think
the other stuff
looks like a Zeo Power Ranger.
Yeah, exactly. Like the other types of ones, the non-morphin. But anyway, so other than that, like, so to go in and make this stuff, I even have this, like, I made it like a Timothy Chalamet, trying to make it look like, you know, he'd be Amuro. I also did Nick Offerman as trying to make him look like Rambarwal with the blue mobile suit in the back, and it was, you know, it was all right.
There's some neat ones in there.
Yeah, and this one that I really liked is where I did Bruce Campbell as with a mobile suit in the background. That's all the prompt was. And
very cool.
But what was interesting was I like this one because that's closest to Rambarwal, even though he doesn't have the mustache. But I like the way his suit or the uniform he's wearing, how that looks, and just
and the mobile suit has this like Darth Vader look to it. It's really sweet.
So, and that's a good point you brought up because a lot of these things get these looks from a potentially 70s or 80s movie. Because in my prompt, I am using, you know, film by James Cameron, photographed on grainy medium format Kodak, Portra, 800 film, SMC, Takumar, 10, you know, the f-stop and all that. Like, this is to make it as if this was looked through a camera lens. So the other interesting thing about that is this algorithm that's used to compose these images, it has no references for a Gundam that looks that way. Because it's never existed. Anyway. Yeah.
Because it looks for like model kits and like.
Yeah. And so if like a model kit can't fit that aesthetic that I'm trying to put into the prompt, like if I do stuff that is, if I'm not specifying how it looks, it will do things as either a model kit or obviously illustrations. If I want something that looks photoreal, there's nothing Gundam in film that is photoreal yet, so it actually has to just make up stuff. And that's why we're not going to get something that looks entirely like a Gundam. There's some shots that are pretty close.
Yeah.
Like, that's not bad, especially it has the RX-78 colors. The thing is, the height and the, like, the face, obviously, is wrong, but it's got the V-fin. I thought the Char ones were interesting, because I even said portrait of Char Aznable standing in front of a mobile suit. And I think this one turned out pretty good, because that almost looks like a head, maybe of the Sazabi.
He looks like the bully from Revenge of the Nerds.
Oh my god, yeah, it totally has that 80s hair going on. And then this was another one that I thought that was pretty cool too, but it looks more like a mobile armor.
Yeah.
Like a ground-based mobile armor. I thought that was pretty cool. Yeah, something I saw. So, Char Peak. My name sounds close to Char Peak. So Shafiq. Maybe that's what you meant. And then he's saying Gundam and Ready Player One look photoreal, right? And I would say almost. That was super CGI heavy, I think. The one it almost looked like a video game in Ready Player One, unless I'm being too judgy. Some other
video game. I mean, it was a good video game.
yeah, I know.
It had ray tracing.
Yeah, exactly. High-end stuff. Some of the stuff I loved in this is when I added, like, showing lasers being fired. I mean, this stuff looks cool. There was a comment, because I wanted to look at that too. Neon Wave is saying this looks like something that could be its own IP and gives off an 80s vibe. And I think that is absolutely true. And I think, like, to me, this is like epic. Like, I love this shot. Awesome. It doesn't look entirely like a Gundam, but you could say this is like some Zeta thing. Like, it almost has more of a Zeta look to it, and I love it. Like, just seeing the lasers in the background, the depth of field.
Your mono eye, and I raise you two more eyes.
Yeah, I know. I love that. Like,
it's pretty sweet looking. Like, I love it's.
Yeah, I mean, and I think this looks pretty Gundam, but like, just to have a modern day movie filmed with this aesthetic, I would love it. I mean, I think it lends to the designs without it looking like, it's almost like, I wonder if that aesthetic calls back to that era of filmmaking where then there's more verisimilitude than if you were just to try to do a modern with all the clear, high fidelity lenses that sometimes makes things look too real, too ultra clean to be realistic. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like the early days of CGI, you know, there was like all of these really super smooth textures on the 3D models.
Yeah.
And the lighting wasn't quite right, so they didn't quite fit in the environment. There's something to be said about like the 70s and 80s sci-fi, where not only were you working with inferior camera equipment that wasn't quite as crisp, so you couldn't see those kind of, like, if the lighting was a little bit off, you weren't going to see it because there was enough distortion coming from the camera that it would kind of offset that. But also, you're working with, like, you know, miniature models, you know, a ping pong table full of model kit parts.
Yeah. No, that's a good point, because that's even the same with video games. Like, sometimes those old classic games look better on a monitor that has scan lines in 240p as its native resolution. Yep. Whereas when you're upscaling it to 1080, sometimes it's like, I don't remember it looking like this. And I think that is a cool direction to go with filmmaking nowadays, that it sometimes happens. There was that recent film, I forget the guy's name, but he shot it in 4:3 in black and white. It was The Lighthouse. I forget the director, Eggers or something like that. Yeah, so I think it's cool when filmmakers do that, and I think that could be that. I feel like that could be a direction you have to go with Gundam. Well, you don't have to, but I think it could lend itself to it being pulpy but taken seriously. You know, if it's filmed that way, and you have the right actors also that are reacting to mobile suits.
Yeah, I mean, that's like one of the big things now. I had a huge argument with my brothers about, like, Marvel CGI films and how, you know, there's a lot of there's a lot of acting. There should be like a whole acting course in schools that teaches you how to act on a green screen, because a lot of these actors don't really know how to interact with the world when the world is put in post. So it's like you have a lot of scenes of people running and like, oh yeah, you can run, and then they put the background in. But like Brendan Fraser even once talked about one of the hardest roles he ever did was in George of the Jungle, which is hilarious to think about. Like he just won an Oscar for The Whale, and he's like, George of the Jungle was the hardest movie I ever did. And it was because back then, you know, the CGI artists were like, we're gonna put this CGI gorilla behind you. Like you have to look like you're petting it. And it's like that your hand is too high here, it's too low there. It needs to be right here. You need to angle it this way because that's the way that the gorilla is going to be facing. And he was like, "This is it's really hard."
That's a good point because yeah, a lot of times, you know, I feel like there's different types of actors. There's actors that are studying the craft of acting. Then there's people that just have those personalities that just work well on screen with others. But the ones that understand the craft of acting could probably do better in something that wouldn't be taken as serious. You know what I mean? It seems like the most serious actors do the best with stuff that is silly and not serious. You know, like Alec Guinness is Obi-Wan Kenobi. Like,
right.
I've never really questioned the space wizard. He's always just, he nailed it. So, yeah, so that, again, the Gundam live action idea, I love it. And so it was fun making this little trailer. Now, the music from the trailer I got from that PS3 game, you know, the side story Missing Link, but is that from a specific title that maybe came out earlier and it's just included in this one?
So I don't know. I'd have to hear it again, but what's funny is when I listened to it, I thought it was either from Zionic Front or 0081.
Okay.
So I think it might be one of those
earlier ones,
one of those tracks that was recycled from those games and put in side stories, but I might be wrong on that. But I mean, I love that I think it's like the title credits, right?
Yeah.
Like it's like so epic and like driving tones. It's really good.
Yeah, no, and that's what sparked me actually making this video was I knew I wanted to make it. I didn't know how or when, but it was just hearing that music and I was like, wait a minute, I can make this right now. And I got the track. Yeah, and sometimes that's what happens. It takes music. I feel like, and I've said this before, there's like these three pillars of good anime. You know, you have animation, you have story, and then you have music. And I feel like as long as two of those are good, then I can watch any anime. But music is very powerful. Like when I first got into Gundam, it was like music was kind of the thing that really grabbed me.
And each Gundam anime series has like its own unique musical flair to it, which I think is really it's awesome because it kind of gives the show its own identity among the pantheon of Gundam anime.
Yeah, even with the same composer on some of that early stuff, he had it still distinct, but it would have callbacks to certain things. So, yeah. Oh, IT Commander, good to see you.
Hey, cheers, buddy.
Let's see. I hope
that is IT Commander is Juby. He is the one responsible for this full armor double Zeta Gundam.
That's
cheers,
cool.
buddy. Good to see you.
Oh yeah, very cool. And Shafiq is saying, I hope it's at least similar to Dune or Pacific Rim 1 level of looks to it. Yeah, Dune looked great. I keep forgetting about that director when I feel like who would make a good movie of any IP? It's Denis Villeneuve. He could probably do anything.
Yeah.
Let's see. And Ian is saying, yeah, the music creates the identity of the show. That is true. There's something about, especially music intros, like to me, it seems like in anime, they really focus on like the song that's in the intro, as if that is a big part of it compared to like the West or whatever. And at first that would annoy me, but over time it's like the songs, I don't know how it's happening. Am I liking the show so then I'm liking the song more? Or is it just I'm hearing the song over and over and then I just like it?
Right, the exposure therapy.
Yeah.
Well, you know, that brings up a good point because, you know, the opening credit song is supposed to set the tone for the rest of the show. And so when you have a show like Zeta Gundam where the opening credits song was switched for the American release, you and I have talked about this before, where we actually like both versions.
Yeah.
Sometimes I like the American version a little bit better, and I think
Yeah.
where that comes from is that the original intent behind using sort of a pop song was it kind of captured that 80s vibe. I really love
Yeah.
the track Cinderella 4. It's got that like sweet heavy reverb guitar solo in the middle of it that is just like perfect moment
Wow.
for Camille and Four to kiss. Sorry, I'm
Yeah.
like going off on a tangent here. but
No, that's good.
but yeah, I think that love pop song kind of was the original intent of the show. But then when the show was localized for the West and they changed the song over, they realized the impact that that the series had on the Gundam franchise. And so putting in that Aug theme gives it that more like heavy Star Warsy, like
Yeah.
this is an
Epic
important
space opera.
piece of the story. So like we're gonna kind of play that up and play down the sort of city pop vibe that we were originally going for.
Yeah, that's a very good point because love the original, but there's it fits the American version just fits. Like especially if you're trying to get someone into Gundam in the US that's never really gotten into anime or anything, if they hear that American
Those
opening.
driving timpanis at the beginning, just
Yeah.
boom, 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 boom.
Yeah, love it.
Yeah.
Hey, Zionic Shadow, good to see you. Glad to join us.
Hey,
And
bud.
Nike, good to see you too. Shafiq asks a good question. Who do you think will make a good soundtrack for a Gundam live action movie? And I will admit that, I'm a soundtrack guy, and I haven't been as impressed with soundtracks in film since 80s and early 90s. I feel like it's kind of changed where they're all kind of the same sounding.
Yeah. Well, once Hans Zimmer took over and like everything is
Well, even
everything's Hans Zimmer.
he's pretty interesting because I feel like he's usually told what to do and he just does a good job of making the samey sounding things.
Yeah.
But he adds a little bit of like digitalness to it. Like more techno style things sometimes are flourishing it.
You know who would be an interesting choice?
Yeah.
I don't know the name, but the composer that did the music for Mad Max Fury Road and Wonder Woman.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because they kind of have very distinctive parts to it.
Yeah, there's like a lot of like electric orchestra instruments in there. Like there's like I think there's some electric cello, which is an interesting choice. And while I don't necessarily believe that those soundtracks would work in Gundam, I would love to see that composer's interpretation of what would work in Gundam, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that does make sense because my first thought is there's so many Japanese composers that I think are awesome that I've learned about through Gundam. But yeah, I guess let's have a Westerner take a shot at it since this is going to be an American-produced live-action Gundam movie.
Like
one
Sid
thing
Mead with the designs.
Yeah, exactly. Good point. One thing, speaking of soundtracks, so like I'm not into the Marvel movies and I've watched Captain Marvel once. Didn't really care for it, but I noticed the music in Captain Marvel was good. So if you guys haven't heard it before, sometime when you're bored and want to listen to some music, that Captain Marvel soundtrack is done very well. And I think it's a female composer, maybe from India. I could be wrong about that, but I remember the sound is very distinct. That's what really gets my interest in a soundtrack if it's like distinct. And Zionic Shadow is saying have both American and Japanese collaboration, which is not a bad idea.
Yeah,
to do it that way, since the source.
In
material.
fact, my favorite whiskey is a collaboration between a Kentucky distiller and a Japanese distiller.
Wow.
Legend Bourbon. If you haven't tried it, and you're
Okay.
of drinking age, of course, give it a try. Kentucky bourbon aged in Japanese sherry wine casks. So,
And did you say Legend Bourbon?
Legend with a T.
Legend. Okay. I might have to check that out then. Okay, and so a couple other things real quick from Lucas Garrett. This is about that AI thing. What gets me is that there are hundreds of thousands of images and videos about Gundam, and yet the AI-generated apps and engines can't get the heads right. And I think, yeah, that's for the reason we described. Everything else is fine, but for some reason, whether they come from Dream, Wonder, or Midjourney, they can't get Gundam completely right. That being said, I still love this video, and it would be great for a concept art for future live-action Gundam content. Thanks for sharing, Adam. Yeah, definitely, like... Yeah, it didn't come out exactly, but it's just cool cool concept anyway.
The bodies look good. It's always just the face that it
Yeah.
can't quite nail.
Yeah, and even then, like, the faces would look good, but for another thing that's not
Right.
like a Halo
Yeah.
costume, maybe, or Halo suit. Carlito's saying they just look like meshed up stormtroopers and bionicles. Yeah, so look like that. Oh, and Giancarlo, your Gundam from Wish has arrived. I thought that was pretty good too.
That's a good one.
I know. Yeah, the Gundam face is not right. Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I love some of the jokes that came out of that. So anyway, that was fun, and really, I suggest if anyone's into this AI art, it's a very fun and interesting pastime. It might motivate you or inspire you to like create something. Or if you have something Gundam related and you don't want to pay for the AI art, or just message me with some ideas for prompts, because I'd love to still experiment and create some other Gundam themed stuff.
Yeah. I mean, the trick is definitely like, sometimes the AI doesn't know what you're talking about when you talk about specific franchises like Gundam, or like, it's like, oh, I want to see I want to see a Krieg or a Space Marine. It's like, it might not know exactly what you're talking about if you're talking about a specific franchise. So you have to kind of like tease it out and say like, I want a blonde-haired gentleman with a red robot behind him.
Exactly. And that for Rumble Raw, I specifically said Nick Offerman standing in front of a mobile suit. So yeah, you're right. You got to kind of be creative with that stuff. So yeah, that's fun. And just real quick, there's some other ones that I made, shown an example of, like I did black metal album cover art. So it's going to take...
Looks like Guyver.
Yeah, and so that's where this art style then looks different, because it's not through like a lens of a camera. It's actually what someone has drawn or painted, and some of it looks sick as hell. I even did, I think for this stuff, it was like a Judas Priest album cover with the Gundam on it, which I think looks great. This one's funny because there's like some furry dude in the back that's like, this has to be some story. I love it. It's super fun doing this stuff.
Yeah.
But, okay, moving on real quick. So this was neat. So Crunchyroll has launched an English dub for Witch from Mercury, but it's just the prologue for now. But I wonder if that means this Sunday it's going to be episode 1, and then they're going to do that up until around the time that the second season comes out.
It's interesting that they just didn't make any announcements.
I know. It's
especially. I heard you like some Gundam.
Well, what's weird about this too is I saw that on the Microsoft store. Someone posted it on a Discord. I forget. It might have been yours or something, where it was like on sale. And I noticed that the distributor of Witch from Mercury on the Microsoft store was Crunchyroll. Now, it said only Japanese, but why I'm bringing this up is because also with the dub for Cuckoo's Doan's Island, that was done by Crunchyroll. And I right now have Funimation and Crunchyroll, because Funimation has English dubs that are not on Crunchyroll. So it almost seems like Crunchyroll is trying to be in the business of dubbing, maybe, and that's why there's dubs missing on Crunchyroll that are only on Funimation. I don't know if anyone has any more information on that, but on one hand, hopefully that's not a bad thing that Crunchyroll seems to be the one that's trying to do all the dubbing, but hopefully that means we're going to see more dubs being released. Just surprised, like you said, like they didn't even announce this.
Yeah.
So, I watched the prologue. The voice acting was good, so I really can't wait to finish it. There's even those normal voices you hear all the time. Like some of the voices, like, oh, that's a guy from
Suspects.
Yeah, it's like you could kind of hear that, so that's kind of funny. Now,
how was the localization? Because I haven't watched the English dub. So or have you gotten that deep into it where you maybe like compared the subtitles to the dubbed lines to see like were there any drastic changes?
You know what? I wouldn't say there was drastic, but there was kind of changes in the way they were explaining things they were going through, where it almost seemed clearer to me. And maybe that's a reading disability I have, but like reading subtitles sometimes takes me a second, but when someone tells me something, I'm like, okay. So And it could be a mix of trying to read that translation versus the actual dubbing being spoken, and how they then modify it. So,
Yeah.
Have they censored any of the scenes in the dub prologue? Nike asked. Good question. I did not notice that. Because there was some good action near the end. Hey, WebFox, good to see you. Crunchyroll has been dubbing for a few years on other anime, and now it's owned by Funimation, which is a dubbing company. Okay. So, so that's what's interesting. So, that's why I don't know why there are dubs missing from Crunchyroll that are on Funimation.
Right, yeah.
That's I forget what it was I was watching, but it might have been a Gundam show or two. There was just a few that they didn't have a dub, and I was like, well... So maybe they're still working that out.
Interesting, like, even with the relationship between Funimation and Crunchyroll, I'm like, because I've heard mixed reports. It's like, was it a merger or was it an outright acquisition? Because if that's the case, like, why would Funimation acquire a distribution network if they already have a distribution network? Like, it seems kind of silly.
Yeah, there might be more, I guess. What am I trying to say? Money reasons that don't necessarily mean anything to the viewer, but more to the board of directors. Who knows?
I don't know. It's just all a big laundering scam.
Yeah, exactly. It's just a way to move money around.
It's a big Gunpla. It's a big Gunpla conspiracy.
Yeah, Nike's saying maybe due to licensing agreements. Yeah, because I've always heard that. Like when I go look up a dub for a show, there's different companies that do dubs, and you just wonder, like, is there an agreement this could be distributed because it's this company, this can't because,
could be some conflicts going on.
Maybe I need to research that, make a video. I don't know. Anyway,
there you go. Corporate espionage between anime companies.
There you go. There's something going on there. That could be its own anime. Okay. So I wanted to bring up this Amakusa, aka Jupiter Gundam. So when we were talking yesterday about AI on your stream, I did some some researching real quick beforehand to see how far that goes in the UC timeline. Because what was weird was we were showing a screenshot from Wing talking about a UC related AI and from a manga. So I thought that was interesting. So
Easter eggs in there.
Yeah, which is not uncommon.
Plus a little bit of like, all your base are belong to us weirdness going on.
But through that research, I found that there was from Amuro Ray's core fighter, they got, I guess, his pilot data and created a brain, essentially a lab-grown brain that has his data in it for this Amakusa Jupiter Gundam. That looks interesting because it's like I'm seeing a mix of well, I would say Anaheim and Xeon, but really the mixes of the Xeon-based mobile suits with the Federation-based ones. I mean, we even got like a Xeon V-fin, kind of the spike and curved look of a Xeon, but you have the vents, and even that kind of protruding front that's more of a Federation fighter or mobile suit. So I think that's a pretty neat. Oh, it's got the binders.
Like tall geese.
What's that?
The plates on the side of the thighs look like the tall geese, the way that they're.
Oh yeah.
But
yeah, with all the thrusters underneath too. Yeah, and then I was looking at other things. They have like, SD versions. So this suit has actually got around quite a bit, and so this is apparently a Amuro Ray AI driven mobile suit. And they did a mass production version that has a beam shield instead of the regular shield. But I guess, looking through these pictures here, which is really cool, that V-fin is gigantic.
It does look like they literally pulled it right off the Xeon and stuck it on.
And they could have, due to, like, I guess how they... okay, that's a weird variation, unless that's just another suit. Yeah, that's another suit. So it looks like, there wasn't even a model kit made for this. I just think that's pretty cool because it's an Amuro-driven one. It's in the Crossbone storyline. 0130, I guess, is when they started development. And then 136, I guess, some more stories. So pretty cool because I haven't really jumped into the Crossbone story much at all, really. We know that Judo shows up with his Gimp, isn't that what it's called? And then
the Gump? Yeah.
Gump, there you go. And then Amuro has it. So it's cool that there's these neat callbacks within the Crossbone saga. That would be something to get
gets
into.
A little weird, but weird in a good way, I would say.
Yeah, no. But again, another example of the type of AI that's used, within the Gundam universe. Brian Zanichelli showed up. Good to see you. So Nike's saying the brain thing reminds me of Ein Dalton, EIN Dalton. Not familiar with that.
That's IBO.
Oh, okay. Interesting. I haven't watched that yet, and I'll need to soon. Let's see. Gundam Facts did a whole entire history video about this mobile suit. Oh, very cool. Let's see. Webfox is saying AT&T had Crunchyroll for sale for a year, I think, before Funimation Sony bought. Oh, interesting. So AT&T might have originally owned Crunchyroll. I guess that when it was merged with those other companies, who knows what they do there.
Yeah, I mean, and what's fascinating is like a lot of people think that companies like to consolidate in order to merge things together, when in actuality, they usually do it to split things apart, because then, if Sony owns both Funimation and Crunchyroll, they like to keep those things separate because that means you have to pay for two different subscriptions. Yeah,
which I do. Pretty sad.
Sucker.
But you know what? That also leads to, in video games, Embracer Group bought Enix from Square Enix for $300 million, and then they sold Amazon just the Tomb Raider IP for $600 million.
Yeah.
So they made out like a bandit in all this. And I think that's what happens a lot. It's like, here's something that's making money, but just not enough for this company that has too many things it's got to pay. So a company will just buy it and then usually let people go, and then they're still making money off of this IP. It's weird how that's kind of how it works. It's just because it's not making enough money, even though it still makes money.
And a lot of companies like to compete against themselves. They'll release the same product essentially under two different names, just because it's like, well, you can buy either one, and either way we win.
That's a good point too. Yeah, a lot of those bigger companies do that. Let's see, anything else before Brian Sanchilli? Is it possible that UC might have an AI mobile suits without pilots in the cockpit? So potentially this Amakusa, I don't know for sure if it does have a cockpit or not.
The Phoenix? Does that count?
Well, but it still has a cockpit, right?
It does have a cockpit, but I mean, what's inside of that cockpit is
right.
Like a...
Well, that's a good question, because what if the cockpit has just been completely sealed? What was that? Was that the Phoenix? Wasn't there something where they were trying to open the cockpit and they couldn't? Or am I thinking Benager and the Unicorn? That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, Benager and the Unicorn. I think that happened. Yeah. That seemed to be a common thing, because I think Camille locked himself inside the Mark II, and they had to bust him out too. So it's these Gundam protagonists. They're so whiny. It takes forever to get them into the Gundam, and then once they're in, you can't get them out.
Yeah, that is. Yeah. What's up with that? Okay, moving on. So I thought this was pretty cool, because I'm not huge on Wing, but for some reason, I'm already feeling that Wing nostalgia, even though I just watched it recently. But there's some elements of it that's like, Wing. It's like when you see a little baby try to do adult things. It's like cute. And I guess that's how I feel about Wing. But that Death Scythe that they have, that high grade, looks sick. I mean,
yeah.
And even to me, that's more of a gimmick Gunpla than I care for, but it looks sick. And so I remember Sayla, who's part of our supporters, she has been trying to get this forever. Is it an older version, a different one? Do you happen to know? of the Death Sight, the high grade Death Sight? Because this is a new one. Does that mean that old one was just out of print? Or is it a different version?
There was an older, it wasn't a high grade, but there was, and this is the anime one, not the Endless Waltz version. But,
yeah, because Ian is saying that. Yeah,
I have the old 1 to 1/44th scale version of this kit. It's terrible. It did not age well. I will say that. But yeah, I think that the high grade one is gonna be sweet.
Okay, so yeah, he's saying that it was the standard. So that's interesting that there are fans of Wing that kind of have to wait, because it seems like Wing is very popular, but they have to wait for certain versions, and then you'll hear people say, I don't really like Endless Waltz version that much, even though it is still kind of cool, but it's weird how that seems to be a thing.
I mean, because I remember when I was watching Gundam Wing, and my favorite character was Wu Fei off the bat, and I was like, I want to go get a Shenlong model kit. So I went up to Another Universe. If any of you guys in America are familiar with that shop, it was like one of those shops in the malls in the 90s. They usually had like a Predator and an alien in the window. But that's where we got all of our like anime gear. And so the first model kit I ever bought was a 1/100th scale Ultron Gundam. So it was the Endless Waltz version of Wu Fei's mobile suit, and I was like, this doesn't look like the one from the cartoon, but I'm gonna build it anyway.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it was awesome.
That is confusing.
I didn't even know Endless Waltz was a thing at the time, but I was buying Endless Waltz kits.
Yeah, because that's what Ian's saying. The Death Scythe Hell is the upgraded version. Neo X is saying we already knew this was coming. Yeah, I'm sure. Nike, it's more interesting to me that the TV designs are high grade and the Endless Waltz designs are master grade. Yeah, that's another good point, because I do have the master grade Sandrock, which I think is awesome looking. Yeah, Android.
I'm boring Juby with this story.
What's that?
So I'm boring Juby with my old story about being in the 90s.
No, hey, 90s are awesome. There's so many cool stories out of there. Androius is saying the older Death Scythe Hell kit is no grade. Yeah, that's right. The former is poor while the latter still has its charm. Okay.
Yeah.
So, Shirt Lad saying Wu Fei was the original Giga Chad. Okay, I can see that.
He was definitely the original MGTOW, if that was.
Oh yeah, I don't know who that is. Let's see. Nike. There's a tiny detail you need to know. There's the TV series Endless Waltz movie and the Endless Waltz Glory of the Losers manga series. Yeah. I think it's time for a lore video on the Death Scythe. Huh, Ian? We'll see. We will see. Okay, that was that. Next, so I admittedly have not been playing Gundam Evolution just because, it's not a bad game. It's just not my type of game. But I think it's neat that they announced a new suit, and it's not one that I could say I've really heard of before, this Hyperion Gundam. So looking it up real quick, it's from Seed X Astray manga, so it's a manga suit. And you know what? I can't say that the design sticks out to me or looks cool or whatever, but I bet it had just the right things about it to make it a cool video game suit.
Yeah, which, again, the developers for Evo are like, they get some weird deep cuts. Like, you can tell that they're Gundam fans because they go for these really obscure suits that, it's like, why would you do the Hyperion Gundam over, like, I don't know, literally anything else? like maybe
Wing
one
Gundam.
of the Astra units. Like, the anything from Wing. Like, it seems crazy that they pull some of these out. And
yeah, that's a good point you bring up, because it could be that they know Gundam so well they know what would translate good to a hero shooter. As much as we might like Wing, it's like maybe they have to make up stuff for it to work. Whereas this Hyperion, I mean, I don't know, unless it's because it's one that hasn't been known about that well, and then now they can release a model kit. of it, so it's kind of like that synergy of selling it.
Naturally.
But it Hyperion uses the Gundam operating system. That whole I love that, the acronym for Gundam.
I sure do hate that.
No, I
But
do
you know
like
what? I'll take that over the Gundarms from
See, I don't mind Gundam. I guess I love how ridiculous that is.
It's
to
pretty
like
silly.
to do that. The Gundam, it is weird. That it's kind of a stretch. That is kind of a stretch too. Anyway, yeah. I don't know. I mean, is any of you planning to play this? Is the Hyperion actually already out? Androius is saying the Hyperion has a unique barrier. So, and then Nike's saying Gundam Evolution is a weird game in my opinion. I think the more hardcore fans would prefer something like the Gundam Extreme Verse games. Yeah, and I think that's what it is. They just kind of released Gundam Evolution as a way to attract new Gundam fans.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I think the hardcore Gundam fans are playing Battle Operation, right?
Yeah. And I tell you, I've been playing that a lot more. They just released it's an Aqua GP01 Aqua version, which I mean, it's cool because there's so many suits that we could expect them to descend or to use, but they go for something crazy like that, which is still cool, actually, just as another optional way to use a cool suit.
Well, because it's the Federation's so limited on choices for aquatic mobile suits, right? So you kind of have to go a little deep into the lore and say like, all right, well, the GP01 was designed to be a modular suit. So you have your space kit, you have your land kit, throw the aqua kit on it and call it good.
Yeah, and then they put one of the maps back in rotation that you go underwater in, so that's cool. I do like the water battles, and I love the Aqua GM.
Yeah.
But yeah, Gundam Battle
comment. Shirt Lad says the more hardcore fans grind 0081 Battlefield record with friends. So I think he's trying to remind us that we need to hop on and start grinding some more.
Yeah, we need to plan that out.
I unlock that Mark II real bad.
Yeah, we need to plan that out because that is fun to do, and it's one of those that more fun with someone because it's pretty hard.
Yeah, but sorry, I interrupted you.
Oh no, I was gonna actually go back to Patreon questions for February. I put a post up. If you want to for Patreon or supporters, actually I need to do that on YouTube too for YouTube members, where you can just post comments that I go through the month. It might not be, I use that to kind of help give us topics or talk about cool things or answer questions. If I don't get to it by the end of the month, I'll end up making a sort of like a video of the month of any cool comments I saw on YouTube or any Patreon questions I missed. So that will be up this weekend. But for February already, Jedi Sayla has a good one. I like this one. So considering how Zeta Gundam got the reboot treatment with updated animations and plot character development changes, Camille's fate in particular, if Double Zeta got the reboot treatment, what changes do you think the reboot would make? Would the story even focus on Judo Ashita and his friends at all? And if not, what would happen to Haman Karn? Would we have gotten that subplot of Char saving Maneva from Haman's clutches? So, you might be able to help fill in some gaps here, Steven. So, this is a good question because I brought this up before and I need to research it more. I feel like a new translation trilogy potentially changes the ending to where Double Zeta, Judo's story wouldn't even happen. Because they were waiting for Camille, right? To have him taken to the hospital or from the hospital while they were just hiding out at the White Base. And then Judo happens to sneak aboard.
Yeah. So the Argama goes to the Side 1 colony of Shangri-La.
Yeah.
And so they were trying to, I guess, get Camille some help. But if he doesn't need help, then what's the point of being holed up and hiding from Yazan in the first place?
Yeah. Yeah, that's why it seems like things like after that wouldn't really happen, like even potentially Char's counterattack, Unicorn. I don't know, because then that's from the very beginning. And what would happen? What would be the chain events that happen? That Glemmy would be involved, that Char might be involved in a different way. I don't know. But what's interesting is Double Zeta ends with Camille being back to normal anyway, in
Right.
with Fa. So, I mean, it has a happy ending anyway. It almost seems like, I mean, what other pivotal things would have to be with Neo Zeon and Haman that would happen that would then require Judo to change the course of Char's counterattack, Unicorn?
Yeah, it's interesting because where is Maneva during Char's counterattack?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, she's theoretically still at large. So it's, was it Zinnerman that got involved and rescued her from Haman? Or, what
Good point.
why was Char able to take over Neo Zeon with zero opposition from Maneva loyalists?
Yeah.
There's a lot of unanswered questions as far as the anime goes that, like, yeah, I think a reboot of Double Zeta could do a good job addressing some of those. I mean, would Camille continue to fight if, without Char and without the leadership structure of the AUG, which, maybe not.
Yeah, that is interesting because Camille would just be continuing to go after Haman, but I don't know. I feel like it's almost like what happened to Camille maybe made Char kind of go into hiding, because there's still not an explanation of why he's not prominent. Yeah,
Not a lore reason anyway. We all know
exactly.
we all know the production reasons that he's not in Double Zeta, but there's nothing in lore that really would explain why he wouldn't have played his hand, especially with if you're going to talk about like the perfect opportunity to strike, look at Glemmy's rebellion against Haman. Like, that's when Zeon's in its most upheaval state, and you don't think Char would try to make his play then? I mean, it just doesn't seem very Char-like, considering that he waited until the Battle of Abawaku to make his move against Cassilia and Giran.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. I was actually going to touch on that. So apparently, and I might have missed more details on this, there was a manga that's either about to come out or currently out where it's Char after he kind of gets banished from Zeon, the first time he failed before he comes back, and it's supposed to cover what he did during that time period. So if they're doing that, I wonder if eventually we will get a story of Char after Zeta. But again, if they're going to make stories of Char after Zeta, is it going to be based on the new translation or the show? And could they do it where it doesn't matter? It's maybe it's possible they could. I don't know why I'm so obsessed with Double Zeta being potentially written out or not. I just really like it.
Yeah, and it's funny because you have all these like side story mangas. You've got Char's deleted affair, Haman's deleted affair, and things like that. But they really don't. Those are their own kind of encapsulated stories that don't go a long way to answering questions that were presented by the anime. So
no, that'll be interesting. Especially when it comes to Origin. Like, I feel like we could still see some more Origin animes come out. Like, they did with Cuckoo's Doan's Island, but it might be like the team under Yasuhiko. I'm not going to try.
Yoshikazu.
Yeah, there you go. Because apparently that was like going to be his final or something like that. So maybe it's the team under him.
I think he's kind of walked away from the franchise a little bit.
I think it would be interesting to see when. Oh yeah, Ian. See you later. It'd be interesting to see when they announce this dub for Cuckoo's Doan's Island, to get an idea of how successful it was in general for them, from releasing it in Japan and then having the English dub in theaters, and then whatever's next for it. Because they could explore this stuff. Yeah.
I hope that we get a little bit more content that's substantive. Like, obviously Cuckoo's Doan's Island was awesome, but like, let's not just have an Origin remake of like Moon from Double Zeta. Like,
No, my idea is to have something that is with origin with Char that takes place after that time that he got pushed out of Zeon, to see like what his then plan, how he came up with the plans or whatever. Even though we see how it ends, but just to see more of that would be really cool. And then maybe even cut to some random Amuro stuff that we didn't see on screen, just to
Yeah, him being in house arrest during Zeta.
Oh yeah, that's a good
or
one.
like what he was doing with Karaba during Double Zeta.
Yes, that is a good one too, because what is up with Amuro and Char in general during Double Zeta, so that they're not a part of what am I trying to say?
The main storyline or whatever.
Yeah. Even though, again, we don't know with Zeta or Double Zeta, the new translation, what that does. But.
Right.
Oh, NeoX is saying Blue Destiny animation. That's a good idea. They need to take one of those games and do that.
Yeah.
Let's see. WebFox100. I'm sure the Neo-Zeon Civil War wiped out enough of the factions to rebuild it as leader, while Maneva was placed in hiding by Haman and wasn't skilled enough to reform or counter Char. Yeah, that sounds about right. And I bet they talk about some of this stuff possibly. I mean, because I've heard something about Maneva being a body double. I've heard that too. Shirt Lad, does the Hyperion bit make the cut or next time? No, I talked about it, a little bit earlier on this. But I think that's going to be it. That was a good show. If any supporters want to ask something, go ahead and do it on the Patreon, or if you're on YouTube, I'll put up the post today. So it's going to be randomly through the month, and if I don't get to your question by the end of the month, I'll have a follow-up video with it on there. So anyway, Steven, anything to add?
No, this was a fun little deep dive onto obviously the AI topic isn't gonna go away anytime soon. So but yeah. And exciting stuff coming out for the video games.
Yeah, I know. And speaking of video games, hopefully
great news on the horizon for Gundam fans.
Yeah, hopefully we can plan to do that. Yeah, Battlefield record stuff. We'll have to plan that out. Because you now are going to start having potentially videos out on Friday or weekly. I mean, is that still working?
That's the plan. We'll see if my editing schedule can keep up with it.
Okay, well, cool. Well, then, watch out for that. Check his links in the description. But anyway, guys, have a good rest of the day. We'll talk later.